And thank you, Dariusz, for doing such a quick run to give us some space as well. All right, so I'm Andrzej, this is Bartek, and as you can probably see, we are about to talk a little bit about data processing. As Dariusz before us said, it's really important to base on data, not just your feeling, not just your idea about the game. Whether the game is successful or not, especially in mobile gaming, depends very often on what data you gather, whether you gather it properly, and how you monetize it later. But to do this, you need to fulfill certain prerequisites. And yes, we are lawyers, we have to admit it, and we are here to tell you more or less about what you have to do to actually use this data later. Most of you are already familiar with GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. You have seen it everywhere probably, and you see it every day on websites, on mobile apps, everywhere more or less. You see those checkboxes, you see privacy policies, you see some cookie management tools. You see a lot of documents and information everywhere, with the exception of mobile game applications. And this may be a bit surprising because they're everywhere. You can't open a website without seeing things like that, but you can play most games without seeing such banners, such information, such privacy policies. And the same question, why is that so? And come on, what's wrong? Why in mobile games there is not many such documents? Is being asked by many people, users, and data protection authorities as well. And well, it's a very good question because the gaming community, which is typically very the first community to implement multiple tools and such things, is not so fast in implementing the data protection management tools. And authorities see it, and actually Polish Data Protection Authority intends to focus their investigation on mobile applications in general this year. And our Data Protection Authority is not the only one. Actually, most of data protection authorities intend to focus their investigations on mobile apps in upcoming year and the following year. Okay, so this is a little motivation, and here's some numbers for you.
Yes, thank you. As Andrzej has mentioned, nowadays, in most cases, mobile apps, including mobile games, are connected with personal data processing. And more than 90% of mobile apps transfer data to at least one third party. From our experience, it is in most cases connected with micropayments, marketing processes, and analytics. And now a little bit information about the average cost of acquiring a registered user. From the statistic, it's around $3, and it's a difference between Android users and iOS users, because when it comes to iOS, it's a little bit higher, or something around $7, and when it comes to Android, it's around $2. And now a little bit of motivation, financial motivation, because from our experience, highest fines for GDPR violation relate to mobile applications. For example, last year, Irish Supervisory Authority imposed a fine in the amount of 225 million euros on WhatsApp, to be precise, on Facebook, now Meta. And the main reason was that the privacy policy was not clear enough for the users. So basically, after reading privacy policy, the users were not able to tell what was going on with their data. And that was the main reason. So that's why everybody should be focusing to provide all necessary information in their privacy policies. And now, from our experience, mobile application market in general are not in line usually with regulations, guidelines, legal guidance. And from our experience, disconnected with the idea that publishers, developers, in most cases, are focusing on simplicity and being user-friendly. And in most cases, they think that it cannot go hand in hand with being in line with GDPR. And the main obligation that is being neglected is the obligation to provide users with all necessary information regarding their personal data. So for years, there has been a proposal to fulfill this obligation by using icons, but as far as we know, market is going in a different direction. And from our experience, and this is also what we recommend to our clients, the best option to fulfill this obligation is to present at the first launch of mobile app a short but substantial information about personal data processing with reference to broader document that is in general called privacy policy. And then if user is clicking on OK, then we can present to our supervisory authority that we provide users with all necessary information. And it is so-called layer information clause that is in line with GDPR. So we don't have to present all the information within the app, but we have to tell the users when he or she can find all necessary information. And what is very important is that this information should be available for users at any time. So we cannot just have privacy policy on our website, but we should be able to have privacy policy within the app. So the best option is to create user panel with all essential information, and the user can find everything within the app. And now Andrzej will say something about cookies and cookies management. So Andrzej, there we go.
Okay, so, well, like Bartosz said, one area which is very often neglected and comes with big fines are privacy policies. You know, it can be perceived as something very simple, but even Facebook got fined for that. And very often if you use some easy drafts that are downloadable from some sources, well, it's a wrong way to go. You should adjust it to your mobile game. And the other area which is very often checked by authorities are cookies. And it's a bit more tricky than GDPR as it is, because cookies are governed in fact by different regulations. And those regulations are a bit more strict than GDPR. In GDPR, sometimes you can, let's say, circumvent need for consent. You can sometimes base on other legal basis. And in cookies, it's not so easy. Actually, you cannot escape consent for cookies in most cases. And as you have probably noticed, you very rarely obtain such consent for installing cookies. While it would be very easy to obtain such consent, this is one of the Polish games that you may know. It's extremely simple. And our observation is that, you know, if you don't try to pretend that you're not doing something with data when in fact you do, and if you, like in clear, plain language, tell users what you are doing with their data, they will click it, right? They won't mind. The problems come when you try to, you know, pretend that you are doing something different than in reality you are doing. So, you know, right now those tools are getting a bit more advanced, but even such very, very simple pop-up upon installation is less, well, it enables you to lower your risk and, let's say, not get under the radar of the Data Protection Authority. Of course, you can go also in more complicated way. Like, you know, this is one of the examples from one of the most popular mobile applications, not games, but just mobile apps. When you have division to, you know, location cookies, advertising cookies, necessary cookies, and so on. It's of course perfect, it's great, and, you know, it works in mobile apps in general. This is one of the most popular apps that we helped, you know, adjust the regulations. It didn't hurt popularity. It helped a lot with enabling the provider of this application to process data of users in, well, great ways for business, of course. So, you know, this is another way to go. And until recently, developers could argue that, you know, there is no tools for that. It's just impossible. There are hard limits on coding, and, you know, no way to go. Well, it's no longer truth, and as you are probably aware, the Apple greatly changed their policies and actually limit installing cookies and similar technologies on the devices. The Google right now changed their development tools, and they enable users, and they help you enable users to govern users' data in a proper manner. So, well, there is just no escape from that, and sooner or later this will be the standard, and it is already becoming a standard for the top-tier developers. But well, why shouldn't we do this already? Especially if we know that the Polish Data Protection Authority will go with those investigations, and they already announced it. So yeah, this is quite simple, and well, it can not only serve the legal reasons, but it also can serve business reasons. And Bartosz, could you elaborate?
Yes, and you may ask at what stage of game development personal data issues should be addressed, and this is what we recommend. And from our experience, the best option is to take care of this issue at the very beginning, so at the first stages of game development. So this is the time when you decide on whether business goals you have. So it will be different whether you will be focusing on micropayments within your game, or maybe you you want to create a huge database for different opportunities, and then maybe in some cases you will not collect personal data at all, and then you'll be only focusing on basic functionalities, and the personal data will be not an issue for you at all. And now Andrzej will say a little bit more about main rules of GDPR, so privacy by design and privacy by default.
Okay, so we would be very happy to tell you everything about GDPR, but you probably wouldn't listen. So we decided to focus on two really most important things that actually work for business, and they are not just for us lawyers, but they help business, in fact. So when you design a process, you very often think first if you really need it, is it worth to implement, will you spend money on it, or it will generate some return. And surprisingly, this is more or less what GDPR requires of you. Some companies go with approach, or used to go with approach. Let's collect all the data we can. Maybe we can use it at some point. Well, as you can imagine, it's a very wrong way to go because it generates costs. It's harder to code. You will have those databases that you have to take care of. You can have some leaks. You have maintenance of it. And it doesn't make sense from business perspective. And of course, it doesn't make sense from legal perspective as well, because it only generates risks. And this is more or less what GDPR requires of you to do in the first place. So think first if you really need some data and how are you going to use it. Ask your marketing, or if you're like small studio, think even if you have capabilities of using some of the data that you collect. Very often companies think about, let's say, adjusting prices for some packs or DLCs or some micropayments to user preferences, but they do not really know how to do this. So in such case, perhaps it's best not to collect data, first learn how to use it, and only then implement those features. Another thing is that it directly transfers to money. It's not only a matter of risk management, but if you have a proper database that you really know how to use, and you have obtained proper consents before, you can actually have great benefit from it. And you can target some users, some groups of users. You can adjust your pricing policies to that. You can adjust targeting of commercials. And you can also provide other companies with your marketing capabilities, if you have them. But you can only do so if you got those consents properly and you have a valid database. And another thing is, respect your users. And this is basically privacy by default rule. So let your users choose, right? Most users will not like a company which by default takes all their data and are little spies in the phones, right? People don't like this, and people are getting more and more interested in data. They are aware, and they will get more and more suspicious about companies which do not let users make their own choice. And as you have seen, it's simple as that, just simple pop-up to give your users a choice. So I think it's worth it. And it creates value not only directly by greater income from your advertisement in-app or for micropayments that you have in-app, but it also creates value for the company itself, for your investors and for the funders. Because when we are handling investment for some company, for some fund that invests in mobile game, one of the main assets of the mobile game, apart from people, of course, in the company, is the proper database. And if it turns out that this database is worthless and it was acquired without proper legal grounds, the investor is less likely to invest in some project than in the cases where you can show that you have done everything by the book and that you have great database that has potential for commercializing it and selling other apps to your users as well. So yeah, basically privacy transfers to money. So we encourage you to take care of that, especially considering how simple it is right now. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach right now or after this stage. We are around to find us. Thank you.